Chris Lee and Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14 here to talk about Tuesday night's SEC basketball action. The big game, of course, Alabama-Auburn. Auburn wins that going away 100-81. Biggest takeaway for me, Blake, just a complete win for a complete team by Auburn there.
Yeah, I'll be the first to admit, we did everything we could previewing this game. We tried. We said, look, if this is going to be a game, it's got to be Alabama's, if not the best defensive effort they've had all season, one of the best by far. And it just, they couldn't stop Auburn, and that was the big difference. We also said, if Alabama's going to make this a game, you can't let Walker Kessler play 30 minutes, because if he's on the floor for 30 minutes, you're probably not going to win. And that's what happened. He played 28 minutes, just was, again, I've said this so many times now, throw the stat sheet out. Like, just don't even look at it. Like, yes, there's a lot of good stuff on there, but like, there are so many things that he does on every possession that just are impossible to sort of quantify. Just him being on the floor, I don't know that they're, and this is, again, I've said this before, right? Like with Jabari Smith, I think he's the best player in the league. I think Walker Kessler is the most impactful player in the league.
Yeah.
Maybe, I think you put him right there with Oscar Tshiebwe, like now at this point. And again, that's not a knock on any of these guys. That trio we've talked about, I think is far and away, those three are just spectacular. But like Kessler, once again, for me, was the difference. And, I know all the other guys. Wendell Green was fantastic. Think about it. 23 points, 27 minutes, only one turnover. He was great here. And really, when Alabama, you started this, the momentum swung, right? It was like, 15, 14 minutes left in the second half. Alabama makes that run, and all of a sudden it's a, 2 or 3 point game, I think it was. And then it's like, again, you just see Auburn kind of flip that switch, and it kind of starts with Katie Johnson. He's kind of the person that, just energizes everything. And all of a sudden that game just turns into, like you're drinking an energy drink. Like all of a sudden it's gone, right? And I think that's just what it comes down to. We've said it, and, it goes back to the preview, and I was laughing because I know some of you guys are getting on me about saying this could be, 8-point game or something, but it's like, look, that was to me a best case scenario for Alabama. Like, that's probably the scenario where they had to play a perfect game almost for them to have a chance to win this game. During stretches, I suppose that they played pretty well. They got off to a decent start, made that run to cut it to 3, midway through or not midway, 5-6 minutes into the second half. But it's just like you have to play almost flawlessly to beat this Auburn team. They're the best team in the country. Anyone who thinks differently, I'm not with you. I think this is clearly, to me, the best team. We said it yesterday, right? We were previewing the Kentucky-Vanderbilt game, I think. I think Auburn and Kentucky are two of the three best teams in the country. And, Auburn is the best in the country, and they proved that last night, put up 100 points. Again, Alabama, you're not winning this game giving up 100 points. And Auburn they did so many things well, and I'm telling you, this is, I think back to like the Jared Harper, Bryce Brown teams, that Final
this
Four
one's
team.
better.
I was like, in terms of
And
entertainment value, listen, I think that both of these teams are very entertaining in terms of this Auburn team and maybe that Auburn team, but I don't know if, that team in particular, like, I'm thinking about them like Walker Kessler, Jabari Smith, what some of these other guys do. They're both fantastic, and I don't want to knock either one of them because, again, those are two very special teams, but I'm just like, this Walker Kessler, the way he's playing, like, I'm just like, I am mesmerized each time, every possession, just what he does. And we could spend an hour talking about him alone, I think. But to me, once again, he was the difference in this game.
Well, you talked about throw out the stat sheet. Let's throw the stat sheet in for a minute because he had 14 points, 12 rebounds, 8 blocks, 4 steals. And oh, by the way, Alabama got him in foul trouble. He got 4, and it didn't matter. But I've always felt with shot blockers, you've got an impact that transcends the numbers. In other words, you might block a lot of shots, and you can sort of quantify that because a lot of times it gets your team possession and certainly it erases an opportunity for a team to score on that shot, but it also makes you hesitant around the rim. I think you saw that in spots with Alabama last night, knowing that something may be coming, and that applies to Jabari Smith too. And I'm with you. I think he's Auburn's best player in terms of his value right now. Now, Jabari Smith, 20 years from now is going to go down as the better player and maybe the best player in the league probably in terms of what he'll do professionally. But I think Walker Kessler, like you said, I think he's right up there with Sheboy as most valuable player to his team.
Yeah, I mean, it's just he does just so many things. Again, I mean, it's remarkable to think about all the things he does, and really, it's also pretty remarkable to think about where he's come from.
Yeah. Well, and let
Because
me stop you there. You remember before the season, I said I think he's the biggest wild card in the league because I didn't know what to think of him. He didn't do a lot at Carolina. I'd seen him in high school. I wasn't sure if he was going to be a guy who could dominate underneath or a guy that was going to try to go out and hit a bunch of three-pointers, which I don't think his skill set in games is there yet. But you're absolutely right because we talked about that preseason. We said he might be the one guy in this league who, wherever this goes, has the biggest outcome for his team. And I think it has gone – I mean, it's gone as well as you could expect for Auburn.
yeah, I mean, he's just been the difference, and it is again. You kind of look at just what he does. You brought up the stats, and it's like even that to me is like that's impressive enough, but it's like to me like that's mild compared to what he actually does, like in a 40-minute game. Like it's just I'm telling you, he's something. And again, I mean, Jabari Smith hit some shots in this game where you're just shaking your head. You're like,
Yeah.
no one's stopping this guy. Like I think it was one maybe late where he just hit like a contested pull up jumper. I'm just like, this guy is smooth as can be. But again, that go back to Green, right? I think at times this year, Wendell Green has gotten some undeserved criticism, and I know it's kind of been brought up in terms of whether we talked about like the shot selection at times and those kind of things, but I just think like this guy is just man, he has been exactly what they needed him to be for this team. And he was another one that transfers in, plays a year at Eastern Kentucky, really good there, but as we always say, you don't really know what to expect when guys transfer up. And he has been, yeah, he's been a lot of fun to watch too. I mean, he is like that, prototypical Bruce Pearl guard, and it's the same with KD Johnson. And it just man, there's so much to like about this team. And I think that on the flip side, you look at Alabama. As we said, I mean, there were reasons to believe Alabama could be in this game because of what we've said all season long. It's like Gonzaga, Houston, Baylor. No one has three better wins on the resume. But yet, we also pointed this out, I think, at the end of our preview video, and I'm glad I thought about it because I started to think, I was like, well, yes, they've beaten those teams, but as we said, on the road, they haven't been as consistent in those kind of games, right? And they've only played, none of those games they had played to that point were true road games, right? Because even add in Tennessee and LSU, those wins in Tuscaloosa, you lose to Missouri on the road, you lose to Georgia on the road. So, I mean, this was going to be a challenge no matter what. I think we did as good a job as we could to say, here's what could happen. But, yeah, if Auburn's at the top of his game, I mean, take Alabama off of it. Pick any team you want. If Auburn's playing like that, there's not a team that's going to be able to stop them. And I truly believe that. I don't care who it is. If they're playing the way they did last night, where you have all of these guys on, you really don't have anyone that has – much of an off game at all. I don't think there's a team in the country that can beat them in that scenario. You're not going to get that every single night, we know, but last night was exactly what you got, and that's good enough to put up 100 points and beat what is still a pretty talented team, almost by 20 at home. So,
well, for point of clarification, the Gonzaga win was in Seattle, so it's not in Gonzaga's place, but it's
right.
it's
not
a
really
long
a true
flight,
road game.
and
Yeah.
I don't know what the crowd was like, but it's not a true road game, but it wasn't neutral either. I'm going to assume Gonzaga had more fans in the building than Alabama did that day.
That was also the 1st of December, and now
that was a long time ago.
So.
Teams are different, but I thought for Alabama, Jaden Shackelford really carried them in the first half. Quinterly had an awful first half, got going in the second half. And when those two were firing at once, they had a chance, but it just really wasn't going to matter in the end.
You're not going to – you got two guys that score, 20? Like those two combined for 46. Gurley had 11 off the bench. I think the X factor we said going in was one person, and he didn't score.
Yeah.
It's J.D. Davison. We said going in, Alabama's guard group is good enough to – if they're all playing well, you can do some things. And we said also, they're going to have to, because as we said, and it's kind of funny how it played out, but we talked about, we said, look, Alabama's just not a team that shot the three as well this year. Well, they made their threes. 14 of 37, that's pretty good for this particular team. But what do we say also? We're like, if you're counting on getting a lot of points from two, which as we brought up the stat, they were, I think, until last night maybe, they were in the top 10 in the country in 2-point percentage. So they had been efficient in that area. But as we said, the only way you were going to be efficient in that area is if Walker Kessler was on the bench. And it never happened. And they went 11 of 33 from two, 33%. So, look, that's what I mean by the Walker Kessler effect.
Yeah.
Is there were so many times where he didn't get a block shot, but him just being there altered shots. And, I just made it so much harder. And I think that was where, when Alabama's kind of started to make its run, it started hitting some outside shots. It maybe got some easy looks at a couple scenarios, but after a certain time, that's not going to happen, for the entire 20-minute second half. And I think that's where it came in. It's like at some point you've got to find a way to score, knowing you're not going to hit every single three. But, this was one where you were not going to get the shots you wanted inside the arc just because he was on the floor, and, Jabari Smith, all these guys are out there. And yeah, that's what it came down to. And, I was looking up, and I kind of remember, I was like, man, this game's kind of lengthy. But then I looked up and realized after the game, I was like, wow, there were 48 fouls, 61 free throws, I believe. Auburn 31 of 39. So give Auburn credit too. I guess you get to the free throw 39 times, you shoot 80% from the line, you'll take that any day of the week. So that was another big aspect.
Well, let's go back in time if we could. If I tell you Alabama's going to hit 14 threes and they're going to get Kessler in foul trouble, we said we thought that Auburn would win, but that Alabama could cover the 8. Again, it seemed reasonable given how Alabama had played against big-time teams. I think you're feeling pretty good. Now, the X factor maybe here is well, there's two of them, the Davison factor you mentioned, and then the fact that 4 of Alabama's 5 starters end up with 4 fouls each, which certainly impacted the game.
Yeah, and we think back, we compared that first game, and we said, Walker Kessler's stat line in that first game, 2 points, I think he had 2 rebounds, no blocks.
And they won on the road anyway.
13 minutes. Yeah, no, yeah. And they won anyways. But that's like, again, though, you multiply that, right? You're like, okay, double that. Like, say that he doesn't get those 5 fouls. Say he plays 26 minutes, which he winds up playing 28. It's like it's really hard to find a path for Alabama. Even though I'm laughing about it, because like I tried to find a path for Alabama, and I even had a couple Alabama people text me like, you were really trying hard to figure this out for them. I was like, I was.
It wasn't crazy though. Look at history. The wins they had, you don't know going into a game. You don't know. You take what's in front of you. You try to make a prediction, and we're going to get stuff wrong all the time. But it wasn't. Look, it wasn't the craziest thing.
Well, like it's not even about, I think, like the getting it wrong aspect. It's just like I laugh about this because now I'm like, look at what we're having to do.
Yeah.
To try to figure out how can someone beat this Auburn team.
Yeah.
And I think that's the to me the most interesting aspect of all of this is like we're having to say basically, look, Like, you got to play perfect almost to beat this team. And how many teams are going to come out and play perfect, especially on the road? It's not going to happen. So I'm just, yeah, man, this is just, this is one of those teams. Look, if you're, which I know we're not going to have many of those watching these videos in terms of just being like a neutral fan. Like, of course, everyone, has they're either an Auburn fan, Alabama fan, whatever. But like, if you're just like a neutral observer of the game of basketball and you take the fandom aspect out of it, I don't know how you can't watch this Auburn team and think this is an entertaining 40-minute experience just watching these guys play basketball. And so yeah, it's man, I mean, this is a fantastic team, and now I think the biggest thing is we start to look ahead for Auburn. And, they're going to start playing some more road games here against, they've got road games at Arkansas, Florida, Tennessee, Mississippi State. And as Bruce Pearl said every time, like, they're going to get everybody's best shot, especially, now when they're on the road. They're going to get everybody's best shot. I don't know about Saturday at Georgia. I'm not exactly confident that I'll be picking an upset or doing as many mental gymnastics to try to figure out how Georgia's going to beat Auburn. But yeah, like everyone else though, like it's a lot of fun to sort of think about this team taking it on the road and knowing they're going to get the best shots from, what could potentially be four NCAA tournament teams in Arkansas, Florida, Tennessee, Mississippi State. I don't know if all four of them make it. Mississippi State's certainly the outlier probably, but it's going to be fun to see how it plays out. So
I do want to hit on the what's ahead portion there, but okay, you and I are big fans of KenPom. You were notedly not a big fan of the net, and I think I'm going to get there with you. But what are the computers missing? This is what I don't get. I do not understand how Auburn is sitting here this morning at 6 in KenPom and 5 in the net. Explain to me what goes into those calculations.
No, I can't do that. No, thanks.
I mean, this is just, to me, this is potentially one of the best SEC teams I have ever watched. And you and I have watched a long time. I don't think you disagree with me. How is that no better than 5 or 6 in the country? I don't get it. I've seen elite teams at Kentucky. I've seen elite teams a lot of places. We saw them at Florida, the 2 back-to-back that Billy Donovan had. This team to me, and gosh, there's a lot of basketball to be played. I hate to go there yet. To me, this is...
Don't jinx them.
I know. You can send
Don't
your hate mail to me. To me, this is as good a team as I've seen right now since when Pitino had it rolling at Kentucky.
Look at Chris pandering to the Auburn fans. Here we go.
That's just what I think. I don't get. Maybe I'll look up Sagarin and some of the other computers while we're sitting here. I don't see what. There's something in the computers that they're not picking up with this team, and I don't get it.
Everything you said is a perfect example of what I've been saying for a long time now. This is why you can't just look at numbers. You have to watch these teams play, and you can't just judge it based off of I almost used an adjective there. I don't want to describe the AP poll in any way, but you can't just base it off of polls. You can't just base it off of numbers and data. There's way more to it in terms of just watching these teams play. And as we've said before, we are lucky in that we get to watch the SEC and we get to watch all these teams play, regularly, night in and night out. And I know that everyone, everyone can't do that, and everyone doesn't want to do that. You want to watch your favorite team and you want to watch certain games, but that is where you just have to watch a team and understand kind of its full body of work. I looked in KenPom, Gonzaga, Kentucky, Baylor, Arizona, Houston, all ahead of Auburn right now. They all have worse strength of schedules. Auburn has the best strength of schedule, I think, of any of those 5. So that's one aspect. If you're like, well, hold on a second, hold on. But then again, it's like we talked about KenPom before, and by no means am I going to run it down, but it's like even in early February, we talked about how sort of the starting point is very important, like where you start in a season, because eventually that data is going to play out. But still think about how high Gonzaga starts, right? And think about,
Yeah.
I don't even remember where was Auburn's starting point. I don't remember where they even started, but I think that's kind of what it comes down to is I think they started 28. So, eventually it's kind of one of those things where I don't know. I don't want to try to explain it all because I don't know the answer to that, but Gonzaga's been 1 or 2 the entire season and hasn't really gone anywhere. Kentucky started at 17, and now they've kind of made that move up. Baylor started at 6, so like you're starting to see a theme here. I
Yeah.
guess really Arizona's the team that's had the biggest jump. They started at 47, and now they're up to 4 or whatever it is. So I think that certainly is one of the aspects I guess you look at, but I don't try to play the numbers and understand exactly what all the data means. I just watch these teams play, and as I said a few minutes ago, Auburn's the best team in the country. And anyone who wants to deny that right now, I don't know if you've actually watched Auburn play. So
Okay, it gets worse. There's no undefeated teams left. I think Auburn is the only one-loss team in the country. Am I correct on that?
well, if yeah, I assume that, or they're the only one lost team in the country at this level. Yes.
Yeah, I'd have to go down further. I'm looking at Sagarin's. Auburn's 8. And here's what I think you're right. I think it's preseason bias because the 7 teams in front of them obviously all have 2 losses or more. And only one of them, and that's Kansas, has a better strength of schedule. Now, I know margin of victory plays in, but it's not like Auburn is just squeaking by every night. I think you're right. I think it's preseason bias. I think it's who you are. And I'm going to, man, I hate to pick on these guys because they're not really picking on them. But, like, for example, Belmont, 59 in the poll. 16-5, strength of schedule of 182. I just think there's got to be something built in that says, hey, Belmont's traditionally good. It's got to be some sort of bias in here, right? Because I don't know that a non-brand name team, which they kind of are as a mid-major, makes it that high in a computer poll without some sort of a, hey, this is who they are. I mean, if that's Eastern Illinois or somebody, I don't know that it goes that way.
There's bias in everything, even in
Yeah.
numbers. So always keep that in mind. Just because it's data doesn't mean there's not bias somewhere based off of where the data was before or at one point previously. So yeah, I just that's why I think you can use these numbers to a certain extent, but there comes a time where you just kind of have to make a call based on what you see. And again, I think that I've seen this year, having watched, I mean, again, we don't just watch the SEC. Having watched a lot of teams play, I just think they're the best team I've seen this season, and there's a reason they're number 1 right now. And until someone beats them, they're not going anywhere. So no one's going to eclipse them just because at this point, if they went out, they're going to be the number 1 team because they've earned that spot based on what they've done to this point. As we said, they are a double overtime loss away from being undefeated right now. What else do you want, right? I mean, it's like
Yeah.
you've won every game you played except for one game you lost back in November, early December, in double overtime. That's pretty good to me. So,
Well, and here's the next question is, can they go unbeaten in the league?
oh, Chris, I told you not to do it.
I
You are
know.
gonna send all the comments now to Chris. They don't have to worry, but don't just send them to Chris, not to me. I
I'm the
brought up the
jinx the no-hitter
schedule,
guy.
talking about how these, they've got these road games against NCAA tournament teams. They, last road game they played, Missouri, was that right? They won by 1, just a complete grind of a game. Oh, Chris.
Okay,
Chris,
KenPom's
Chris,
got
Chris.
them as at least a 69% favorite in every remaining game. The outliers, Tennessee, which Auburn is a 51% favorite to win. Now, I think they've got 5 road games and 4 home games, so maybe that plays in, but
We'll see. But again, remember this. When they lose a game, mark this down. February 2nd, video, the 14. Who, by the way, is almost at 500 subscribers. We appreciate you guys for that.
yeah.
Be sure to go back and do all your thumbs downs on this particular video. So
All right, speaking of ridiculous, Alabama's strength of schedule. Number one on KenPom. Alabama has played one team over 135 in KenPom this year. We criticize KenPom one moment and then cite them the next. We do like them.
And they lost to that team, by the way.
Yeah, they
that's what's
did.
crazy. Yeah.
And the only team over that's Georgia, which is 206. You don't ever see a schedule where somebody just like doesn't play anybody in the bottom half of college basketball, but that's what they've got. Oh, by the way, coming up, here's some games they've got. You think at some point like you've exhausted all your tough games just by virtue of the schedule and how it sets up. They got 2 games against Kentucky. They got a game at Ole Miss, which we'll get to the Rebels in a minute. A home game with Arkansas, a home game with Mississippi State, home game with Texas A&M at LSU. I mean, it's like you would think that just the run of the schedule would have them playing Missouri and Georgia twice at this point with all the tough games they played, but no, there's no let up here.
No, they've played I think you'd have to look back at like the team that's played the toughest schedule in college basketball the past however many years. I've got to assume this is one of the toughest schedules we've seen. Because like you said, I mean, just to not play anyone that's below that mark, aside from Georgia, like that's pretty remarkable. So yeah, I mean that's why, and I heard him talking about it, I guess on the broadcast last night, about how Alabama could be a dangerous NCAA tournament team. I think that's what you hang your hat on is they've just played so many good teams that, they are at least battle tested and understand, what it takes to have to win some of these games. And certainly, again, you even look at a game last night, you can take away something from that and just saying, if we want to get to that level, we got to be a lot better here and there and there. And again, you've still got 2 games against Kentucky. This schedule is brutal, but maybe that pays off for Alabama. And I think Auburn fans were chanting NIT last night. I don't know where that ain't happening unless Alabama just completely just loses. I mean, they have to lose a lot of games at this point, which I suppose could happen. They're 4-5 in the league. Let's keep that in mind too. I just said it couldn't happen, but let's remember they are 4-5 in the league. So I think they're one of those teams, though. If Alabama goes 8-10 in the SEC, they're probably still okay just because of their wins. But yeah, maybe I shouldn't go too strongly on that, or else people are gonna have a reason to come back to this video for another reason, perhaps if Alabama doesn't make it. But I don't think they're going to be in the NIT. I think they will probably win some games the rest of the way that'll help them make the tournament. But that is one of those teams that too, and the tournament's not in a true road environment either. It's a neutral court. So I wouldn't want to be an 8 or a number 1 seed or a number 2 seed and see Alabama as a 8, 9, 7, 10. I certainly wouldn't want that because I think that, again, they've proven what they can do. It's just that, they've just played a lot of good teams and, really up, as we said, and that was kind of the thought process too, was up until last night, they had played everyone close. In the games that they had lost, I guess outside of the one at Memphis, but that was just, but that you're playing the number 1 team on the road. It's going to take a perfect performance. They didn't have it, but yeah, I think that's at least something to think about with Alabama the rest of the way.
Well, there's still 22 in the net, and I'll give you a baseball analogy. Remember how up in arms everybody was about LSU last year?
Yeah.
And Paul Maneri got run out of town, and we won't get into all that, but LSU was on the verge of not making it going into Selection Sunday. From what I remember, it wasn't a given. LSU gets in a regional, gets sent, I think, to Oregon State and wins that one. Sometimes you just need to run without the ankle weights, and that's what the schedule's been for them.
Yeah, they're going to be one still we talk about the rest of the way. It's like we know it's possible, but I also know that they just, they give up a lot of points sometimes. Yeah. And that's what I think worries you about this team is they give up a lot of points. Even they can score, we know that, but man, they give up too many of those stretches where just teams can score and score and score. And I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens with Alabama. But
okay, while that game's on, I've got Ole Miss and LSU on a different TV, and I look up and Ole Miss is just running away with it early. It was Goodness, they were up 24 points. What, not even 15 minutes in?
Yeah, it was ugly.
And Ole Miss is hitting every shot in sight, which is not what Ole Miss does.
No, that to me that's one of the biggest head scratchers I think I've seen this season.
Yeah.
In the SEC, because remember too, they're still playing without Jarkel Joyner, arguably their best offensive player, right? So they're still playing without him, and yet they were just cruising. I mean, cruising in this game for a good bit of it. And remember too, I mean, this is a great video for people who love to say that I'm wrong about things, because I think I'm jumping off the LSU bandwagon now, because I had been hyping them up and said, I love they lost 4 or 5 heading into this one, but I still think they're okay. But now you start to worry a bit. Which still, I mean, we think about it statistically. How crazy is it for Ole Miss to shoot as well as they did against the number 1 defensive team in the country, right? Like, that to me is why I think I still tried to hang on a bit with LSU. Is like, they are still so good on that. Even when you watch them play, like, they're still good. They had some slips though in that TCU game. We did point that out, to where they didn't play as well defensively in that game. And now it kind of transferred over to this game, where Ole Miss just comes out, and I mean, they got going. And I mean, what did they have at halftime? They scored, like, was it 50 at halftime, something like that?
I'll look that up.
I don't remember, but something like that. 45. They had 45 at the half. But keep this in mind too. They had 45 at the half, but they had, what was it? They had 32 11 minutes into the game. Ole Miss had 32 points 11 minutes into the game. There are many halves, I'd say, or 20-minute stretches this year where Ole Miss has struggled to hit 30. Maybe less than that. So it's like, this is a team, we've said with Ole Miss, it's just offensively, you don't know what you're getting sometimes. And then for them to do this on the road against LSU, which, here's what's interesting to me. If you look at it statistically, LSU did not shoot that poorly. Like, it's not like LSU just completely flopped on offense. It's just that Ole Miss hit so many shots. And Ole Miss still, I mean, they turned it over 19 times, which I know, towards the end when LSU made their rally there. But, yeah. But, I mean, here's something else, too. Let's think about this. We've talked about this point, and I was thinking about this as I was watching the game last night. What have we said about LSU? They are the best defensive team, but because of how they play, there's a lot of pressure, very aggressive team, right? And, it's like Ole Miss gets to the line 31 times in this game, and I think LSU had 22 fouls. Now, of course, we know what factors into that, too, is a lot of that. Ole Miss shot a lot of free throws down the stretch, too, so just based on how the game was playing out. But LSU made that rally, cut it to 2 late. I honestly thought they were going to find a way to win. But they didn't do it. And I think this is one, look, it was to lose against Arkansas, Alabama, Tennessee, the road game at TCU. I thought those are all good teams, right? Like, those are all NCAA tournament teams probably. But this is finally that one game that LSU's had this season where you lose to a team that's not going to make the or probably isn't going to make the NCAA tournament, minus just a huge rally the rest of the way. And that's where I think you start to wonder, man, like, are they starting to slip a bit here? They've lost 5 of 6. I mean, there's no doubt that they are, but I have more concerns now coming out of this game. Even, I didn't have as many, even for a team that lost 4 or 5. I just thought, tough schedule. Let's see what happens. But now that when you lose a game like this, then you start to look ahead and go, well, they're at Vanderbilt on Saturday. I know Vanderbilt struggled, but they're at Texas A&M next Tuesday. A&M's had its struggles, but, you start adding those buts in with LSU, or you're not as confident anymore. And this is the kind of game, I think, that kind of turns your mind a little bit and says, hold on a second, are they maybe not as good as we thought? And is that defense that's really carried them the entire way, is that starting to slip a bit more than maybe we thought it was? So,
well, I think I may have figured out what it is with them as much as anything. I think it's guard play on the offensive end of the floor. And really the bigger thing is, you saw Pinson back last night. He plays 16 minutes, but he's also got this big knee brace on. And I don't think he's anywhere near the same player with that. Eric Gaines has had to be the guy in his absence, and has had some nice games. Brandon Murray, I guess is their 2 guard, has done some things. Had some nice nights and really helped them in wins lately. But you look at the top part of the league, okay? You look at guards. You look at Auburn. Is that Wendell Green and K.D. Johnson? No, it's not. Is that Xavier Wheeler and Ty Washington at Kentucky? No, it's not. Is it Kennedy Chandler and Santiago Vescovi at Tennessee? No, it's not. Is it Quinterly Shackelford and Davison at Alabama? No, it's not. To me, that is where I think, and maybe this is trying to find an explanation and I'm overdoing it, but to me, that's where this starts to simplify. I just don't think LSU has the guards that other teams in this league have. Now, I think if Pinson's healthy, they made it work fine, but he hasn't been healthy now for almost a month, and it's been a different team.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I mean, it's certainly not. There's no comparison, certainly, if both guys, Days and Pinson, aren't 100%. And yeah, I mean, that's been the case. Xavier Pinson scored 2 points since January 8th. He scored 2 points in a month. And, I mean, he hadn't played in 5 of those games, played 7 minutes against TCU, played 16 minutes last night. He's clearly not all the way back yet. So that's undoubtedly been a big difference, I think, for this LSU team. And maybe that's just what we say now the rest of the way. Like, unless he's 100%, you really start to sort of reevaluate LSU for what it is now versus what it was or what it has been for the majority of the season. And I said probably a couple weeks ago, I think before that Arkansas game, I said, look, I looked at it and that was kind of when, Arkansas really needed to win. And I think I remember talking about that game as though I think LSU is going to be fine, but, I just, without Xavier Pinson, like I don't think they're as we've said, they're not a great offensive team, but I think he adds some things that you really need, probably on both sides of the floor. But if he's not playing those kind of minutes, it becomes a struggle. And so, yeah, I think that's part of it. And I also think you just chalk this up to, we say this every time, like sometimes you just have games that are weird. And to me, Ole Miss coming out and starting how they started offensively in this game, like that's an outlier from what we've seen this season. I mean, who would have expected Ole Miss to be up 23 points with 7 minutes to go in the first half and score 39? No one. I mean, they're up 24. They're up 43 points, up 24, 43-19 with 5:46 to go in the first half. Nobody's predicting that, just based on what you've seen from both teams. Not a chance. So that, I think, is just one of those weird games that happens throughout an SEC slate, but unfortunately for LSU, they can't really afford those right now, having lost 5-6.
It's funny. I went to look at the KenPom box score for that game to get the when exactly Ole Miss was up 24 points, and for whatever reason they hadn't updated the game last night, and instead what you had was a prediction of the game, which gave Ole Miss an 8% chance to win.
Yep. So there you go. It's not all about the numbers. Sometimes it's just this league's too good. This league is too good for, I think, what is it? Bill said last night, I think. And listen, I think there's something to it. Talking about the SEC is the best league in the country. It's just, man, it's interesting. And here's something else, too, that was crazy about that Ole Miss win. Something you got to think about. The SEC this year, home win percentage in conference games, 66.1, 39 of 59 home teams have won, I think, according to KenPom, second in the country. So, we talk about the home court advantage, right? And sort of the difference that is. So for Ole Miss to go get a win like that and do it in that fashion, it's not something we've seen a lot. So
I'm not here to bang on KenPom. We love his work. I've met him. He's a really good dude from what I could tell. What the SEC did this weekend didn't really close the gap between them and the Big 12 in KenPom in the league ratings.
Yeah,
but, for whatever it's worth, but
I don't put a ton into those things.
No.
I think that's just look. I think they're the best two in the country. To me, I mean,
yeah.
I think that's been the way most of the season, right? Because in Big Ten, you've had some disappointing teams, and that's not to say the SEC hasn't had a couple teams that have been disappointing, but still, I think it's Big 12 and SEC, and I think what's most interesting to me is you compare where the SEC is right now in the trajectory of the league, and where like the ACC and the Pac-12 are right now. That to me is the most fascinating aspect, especially the ACC. I mean, it's been an interesting couple seasons there. So
Well, and maybe the underrated thing is, again, some of these bottom half teams in the league or bottom third are a little better than you think. We talked about Georgia winning last week. Missouri's been tougher at times and, beat Alabama. Vandy's beaten BYU and Arkansas. Ole Miss pops up and gets LSU. And who else did Ole Miss get?
Well, they lost
Memphis?
at home by 25 to Ole Miss or to Missouri. That's what I mean. It's like just one of those strange things, isn't it?
But the point is, even if the computers don't love the lower half of the SEC, it's done some nice things at times. But anyway, for LSU, here's the thing, okay? I think the schedule sets up for them to figure it out. I don't think you want to be figuring out your issues with Kentucky and Auburn and Alabama ahead, and they've got at Vandy, at A&M, Mississippi State at home, Georgia at home, at Carolina. Those are 5 very winnable games for them, and I think that might be where we see a lot of what they're made of. I don't know. Maybe that's overstating it, but I look at that and I'm thinking, when you're hurting like they are, you need a path to get your confidence and your footing back, and that's about as good as you're going to get in this league right now.
Yeah, by the way, to add to it, that's Ole Miss's first road win this year. So there's another outlier in terms of what you expect in that game. Yeah, it's a big stretch for LSU. They need to win some of these games. More importantly, they need to avoid losing to bad teams to knock their resume a bit. So we'll see. Certainly, I'm nowhere near as confident on that claim that they're the third best team, but I think at full strength they are. But that's probably the caveat you have to use right now is they're not, and until they get there, they've kind of moved back a bit in terms of where you think that they're going to kind of wind up maybe right now. So
3 and 4 right now, Alabama, Tennessee in that order.
I don't know about that. I think.
Well, then who? That's the problem.
But it's like how can we be confident about putting Alabama at 3? I mean, they're 4 and 5 in the league. I would put Tennessee ahead of Alabama right now.
Okay.
I just think that. Look, I mean, it's one of those things where I've said a lot of positive things and tried to be positive about where Alabama's at, but it's still a team that's lost to Missouri and Georgia. So I think it's hard for me to put them ahead of Tennessee. Tennessee's 6 and 3 in the league. So, but then after that, I mean, I say that I'd probably put Arkansas ahead of Alabama. Like, I mean, I don't like. I think it's like, I mean. Again, Alabama, yes, like they have won these games, but I still think we have to judge it by the overall picture. And the overall picture is they've got good wins outside of the SEC. They've got a couple good wins in the SEC, but they've also got probably the 2 worst losses of any team in the SEC. So it's like, where do you put them? I'll tell you exactly where we put them, Chris. George Costanza. Like that's
Here
it,
we
man.
go.
It's just like, so I think that's Alabama easily the toughest team for me to place, but I don't think it's straightforward that they're the third best team. I think you can make the argument for Tennessee and Arkansas ahead of them. But at their best, sure, I think Alabama can fight for that spot just because, again, for the millionth time, we know what they're capable of. So
speaking of Arkansas, I think Jackie Childs as Arkansas was our most underrated SEC.
We got some unusual love from that in the comments, meaning sometimes we don't get a lot of love, but I think we did get some love for that one. So that's good. So that one worked for you. That was a good choice. So
that one cracked me up just thinking about him wearing a hog hat and all that stuff.
You also got some love from the Auburn people who said, I think we are Kramer So so I think we actually did better than maybe expected on our Seinfeld video. If you have no idea what we're talking about, boy, have you missed quite a spectacle.
You did.
Just find the video on our channel and you'll know exactly what we're talking about.
All right, let's talk about the Vols. I don't think any of us had them scoring 90 in Knoxville last night against A&M.
Pretty sure I used the term rock fight for this one, and what do you know? Blake is wrong again. Maybe that needs to be the new name of our channel, especially for this slate, because we didn't do great on this one. We got the winners right, I think, but in terms of how the games played out, a little unexpected how we didn't get the Ole Miss LSU one right. But Yeah, this was a high-scoring affair, and I would not have expected it between these two teams. Tennessee goes from scoring 51 to 90, and yeah, that's that range you get, I guess, with Tennessee. But also, how many times this season have we seen Tennessee have five guys in double figures, and they're all between 13 and 16 points? That is the balance you have to have. If Tennessee plays like this, they are the third best team in the SEC. There we go. If they get that kind of balance, yes, they are going to secure that spot, in my opinion. I just thought it was a very impressive performance, and I loved watching them play offense. And I don't know how many times I've said that before with Tennessee. There hasn't been a lot in terms of just watching how smooth they were offensively. I thought they passed the ball well. There were just a lot of things I thought they did really well in this game offensively. But they didn't play as great defensively, I guess. But at the same time, it's like this was another game that you just had a lot of free throws, a lot of fouls. And that's kind of the SEC special sometimes. But yeah, I thought this was the kind of performance you wanted to see Tennessee have, to have a big bounce back. And yeah, this was a pretty important, not just win, but important in terms of how it played out. So
I'm going to throw this out there. In an alternate universe where the league isn't so top heavy with talent, the players we've talked about at Kentucky and Auburn is the player of the year candidates. Santiago Vescovi is a player of the year candidate. I mean, there's been years that we looked at the league and we're like, there's really not a guy that's the guy, and you got to pick somebody, so it's this guy. I think in another year, he's that sneaky player of the year guy, but it's not going to be this year.
yeah, no, it won't be this year, but he's been someone we talked about in this program the last couple of years. Been so important. Just his progression as a player. But this year he's really taken it to another level, and yeah, he is. He has he's been he's been really good for them. And I think it's just having a couple years of experience in the system and the offense, and as we said, he's not in the role he was a couple years ago, where he had to have the ball in his hands 35 minutes a game, and he just wasn't ready for that role. But now that you have Kennedy Chandler there to take some of that pressure off, and you had those guys last year that could sort of do it as well. Yeah, he's been great, and I think he's going to be a big key for them if they want to make a run. He's going to have to keep scoring, the way he has been, and kind of be that guy that can really fuel their offense. And yeah, if he can keep doing that, I think this is a team that we said has all the tools, but they gotta do it consistently. So
Okay, we've talked about things we might take back. And I think about a week ago I said I'm buying A&M as a tournament team. I don't know what the path looks like. I watch them. I trust them. And I think maybe that's just I love watching them play. They're fun to watch. Maybe I let that hijack my judgment. But they're 67 in the net. And if it's going to happen for them, they're going to have to beat LSU in Florida, Mississippi State at home. I think have to at least get two of those three, if not all of them, because I don't think Auburn on the road is realistic. Alabama on the road going to be tough. I mean, we look at banked big wins for them. Again, that's been the issue. Okay, they've got Arkansas, and that was in College Station, and that's about it. Time's kind of running out for them unless they hit it hot in the tournament and have a run where, they beat 2-3 NCAA tournament type teams. But it's going to be fish or cut bait for the Aggies starting pretty much right now. And I just don't think they can get there anymore.
yeah, we said a couple weeks ago they had to start winning some games, because 4-0 start means nothing, because you beat Arkansas, who's now looks like a tournament team, but at that point they didn't. And so yeah, you got to start beating good teams, and they've had their opportunities, and quite frankly, they've been right there in every game. They haven't been blown out. They've just been right there with their chances. Um, and so they've had their opportunities, but NCAA tournament committee is not going to award spots based on being right there. You got to win some games against good teams at some point, and right now they don't have those wins. And yeah, so they're going to have to. I think that one against LSU is huge next Tuesday. They have to win that one, I think, based on how LSU's playing. They're not going to. Well, I don't want to go too strongly, but they're going to have a very hard time to win at Auburn. And then they've got to They got to beat Florida. They got to beat Alabama. They got to beat Mississippi. Like I think they got to win. If you look at it right now in terms of quality win opportunities, they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 left. I think they got to win 4 of those to even
Yeah.
feel like they're in a, and that's going to be a challenge because Auburn's on the road, Bama's on the road. They can probably win all 3 home games maybe, but again, you're having to, there's a lot of pressure on you to do that. So I think they're going to be one that they need to do that, and if they do, they'll feel okay going into the SEC tournament. But if not, we're probably going to look at A&M being one of those teams that once we get to the SEC tournament, we're going to say, all right, this team's got to win at least probably 2 or 3 to even feel decent about their chances. So,
Yeah, the other team that's kind of in that category is Mississippi State. No shock that they win. That was 78-65, although the game was not that close. It was a 16-1 run. Towards the end of the game, they got Carolina closer. I feel like Iverson Molinar, I don't know if that kid's had a bad game all year. 20 points, 3 assists, just 1 turnover. Not a whole lot changed for State. They moved from 51 to 47 in the net, but I think the big stat is they're 1-4 in quad 1. It's not going to get you there. Now, 4 huge games coming up. They go to Arkansas, Tennessee at home, at LSU, at Alabama. The problem there is they've not played well on the road. You get Auburn at home if you win that one, which I think is a huge uphill climb. But again, they played better at home, and at some point Auburn's kind of due a clunker. Although I guess they had that against Missouri and survived it. I think they're in the same boat as A&M. You better start winning a lot of games quickly, or else it's a deep run in the tournament against the right teams.
yeah, I don't really have a lot to say about this game. I think that, we said could be a bounce back scenario for Mississippi State, could be South Carolina starting to sneak up on people. Turned out it was the former of that category. Yeah, Mississippi State just came out and pretty much did whatever they wanted here. This is another game that was not as close as the score indicated. I think they were up 27-28, 5 minutes or so left in the second half. So this was another one where Mississippi State just kind of, this is what you want to see from Mississippi State after the blowout loss against Texas Tech. I think they need to go 2-2 in these next 4. Arkansas, Tennessee, LSU, Alabama. They can go 2-2 there. Then I think you start to get a little more optimistic about them. But the issue is 3 of those 4 on the road.
Yeah.
And this is a team that still does not have a true road win this season. So, so I think that's the challenge, and we'll see what they can do with these next 4. This will define their season, these next 4 games.
Did you see the stands in Starkville last night? I was astonished at how few people were there.
I mean, look, as we say, like winning solves a lot of issues, and South Carolina is not really a huge game, I guess, from that standpoint. And this is still a team that we've talked about it. Like Mississippi State, I mean, you could, they're right there. Like they never get too high, they never get too low, but they're just kind of there. And sometimes I think that can be worse. Is you're just kind of a team that you're good enough, but you're not yet reaching that level where you think you should be. And I think that's kind of where this team is. But if they can make some strides in these next 4, then people, I think, start to show up a bit more. And I'm sure there'll be more people there for Tennessee next week. But yeah, it's this is just a program that's just kind of in the middle right now and trying to figure out which direction they're going to go in. So,
parting thoughts?
Nope. I know that was a pretty extended thoughts, but obviously Auburn, Alabama was a big game, and there's a lot of interesting storylines coming out of just this particular slate of games, and I think that's what's kind of fascinating. But yeah, that was a lot of fun, and we'll see how things play out with Wednesday night's game. So.
Thanks for listening. Again, if you can hit the subscribe button, that helps us out tremendously. He's Blake Lovell. I'm Chris Lee. We'll be back with more SEC Hoops content and also some baseball content coming soon over here at the 14.